Sometimes there are obstacles in the road that can leave you feeling low, and you don't know how to move forward. Sometimes there are turns you want to take, but the way gets hard to trace. Now you're wondering, how did you get here? But don't you give up until you see how God is ordering your steps, so you can walk into your season. He that has begun a great work in you is faithful to perform. God is faithful to perform. He that has begun a great work in you is faithful to perform. Our God is faithful. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Real Talk with Cindy. Please let me know which city or state that you are joining us from. Good evening, my sister Stacy from Connecticut. Hi, Brenda. God bless you. In due time, God will blow your mind. Good evening, Auntie Sue from Greenville, South Carolina. To bless the world as it blooms. Bless everyone. Please share and let people know that we are here. It's faithful to perform. Also, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is Cindy R. Barber. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you'd like to be a blessing to Real Talk, my information, Cash App information is in the bottom of the screen. God bless you. Thank you so much for coming on and being here. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. He's doing a great work. He's doing a great work in me. God is doing. Hey, Kathy, welcome. My sister Robin from Windsor, welcome. He's doing a great work. Thanks, Kathy, for your help tonight. You and Sasha. Good evening, Mother from Connecticut. Your family is on tonight. Good evening, Yolanda from Trinidad and Tobago. God bless you. Thank you for joining us. So glad to have you. My friend Mike Barnes from Warner Robins, Georgia. God bless you. Hi, Pat. Welcome, welcome. Good evening from Mississippi, eh, Kim? My God sisters are on here from Mississippi. Bless you. Please, if you know any men, pastors, or young men, if you got it right here, encourage your neighbor. Husbands, wives, please join us tonight. Please give us your hearts and likes on tonight as well. God is faithful to perform it. Yesterday, today, God bless you. And forevermore. Hope everyone had an amazing day on today. Faithful and great. Great is His faithfulness. Great is His faithfulness. And what should be considered as we proceed is that this work did not begin with you. Our mothers. God bless you, Nellie from Connecticut. Thank you for joining us on tonight. Claire from New Jersey. God bless you. Thank you for joining us on tonight. So when your next step forward, help us to connect the dots and see this picture of greatness. In fact, I hear God say that you are his workmanship, his masterpiece, created for such a time as
There's my friend Judy. Bless you, Judy. Good to see you. We're just talking about you tonight. Janelle, my niece, God bless you. From Connecticut, thank you for joining. David Phillips, my godson from Charlotte, North Carolina, is on tonight. Amen. Bless you. Hey, Diane. Cuz, good to see you. God bless everyone, and thank you so much for being a part of Real Talk on tonight. And we have a wonderful topic on tonight, and I thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to bring on my guest, and my first guest here is the Reverend Richard Norris II. Hi, cousin.
How you doing, cuz?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to be with you. Hi to all my family that's on, all the BHP family, the Barbers. How y'all doing?
Yes. A lot of family on here tonight.
I'm saying.
Yes. So glad to have you with me on tonight. Your wife is on, and I see some of the church choir members that are on tonight as well. But I want you to introduce yourself. You are a pastor. Give us the name of your church and maybe what you do. And so we just hear from you for a couple of minutes.
All right. Well, my name is Richard Franklin Norris II. I am the proud pastor of the best church in the cosmos, the Bethel Hosanna African Methodist Episcopal Church, located in Pennsauken, New Jersey, at 8216 Park Avenue, downtown Pennsauken, New Jersey, 08109, where when you experience the love of Bethel Hosanna, you experience the love of God.
Amen.
I love my church. I love my family. I want to say hi to my wife, Sister Patricia, who's on the line. And I don't know what else you want me to say about myself.
Let people know that you are a musician.
Yeah, I learned how to play chopsticks a little while ago, and but I have played the piano. I've used to minister music, director the Amy Mass Choir in Philadelphia. Hey, Diane, how you doing? Founded the Amy Youth Mass Choir Philadelphia back in, it seems like eons ago.
Yeah.
My Lord.
Yeah.
But so grew up in the church. I guess the story of me playing was I used to bang on the piano. My mother said, if you're gonna bang on the piano, you're gonna learn how to play something.
Right.
My first piano teacher was Mr. Camp, who was the minister of music at Union Chapel AME Church in Newark, New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
And when I would play my lesson right, he would let me play it on the Allen organ. And that was my impetus.
Wow.
And so love you. Hey, love you, Judy. Love you too. Been playing ever since. Don't have as much opportunity to play now that I'm pastoring, but every now and again I get to sneak away and hit the keys a little bit.
Right. Yes. Well, we're glad to have you tonight, and I'm gonna introduce the rest so I can bring you back on for this wonderful topic we have on tonight. And I'm gonna bring on, this is my brother, Pastor John Barber Jr. Good evening, John.
Hello. Good evening to you, sister. How are you?
Good to have you with us on tonight. So share a little bit who you are and what you do in the church where you are.
Well, I'm Pastor John from Agape Fellowship in East Hartford, Connecticut, where we have the Apostle Eugene Taylor and Robin Taylor. They are our pastors. I'm also the pastor, leader, founder of our outreach youth ministry. It's called New Life for Us, and we serve the community in East Hartford. We give out book bags, school supplies for the youth. Also, I would say former drummer, but I'm a drummer. I've been playing the drums pretty much all my life. I started when my father brought home a drum, and I used to bang on it in the living room. And then from there, my sister started me, Cindy. She started me playing the drums. So that was an adventure. That was I loved it, and so he taught me. And then from there, I went on to continue to play with different groups and things like that. So, but I also want to continue to give a shout out to my wife, Kathy. And also to everyone that is on here. Stay tuned. This is a pretty good topic, and I'm sure that you're going to enjoy it. And just let it minister to you. Let it minister to your heart and to your mind. This is awesome.
Yes.
So excited.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm going to bring on my next guest, which is Jonathan Barber. How are you, Jonathan?
I'm good. Can't complain. How are you, Auntie?
Good. Good to have you on tonight. You've been on my show before.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. My name is Jonathan Barber. As you can see or tell, I am the nephew of Cindy Barber. And also, who you just heard, John Barber Jr. is my father. And I am a proud barber at that. But I'll say more importantly, I am a musician. Well, first, I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. I know where my help come from. And I serve at Agape Fellowship as well. Our pastors are Apostle Eugene and Robin Taylor. I pretty much grew up at that church all my life. And as most know, that my family is heavily involved in ministry. And so I've been very hands-on in ministry. And I guess my expertise has been behind the drums in church. And to this day, I still serve, and God has blessed me to go to school for music and graduate with a bachelor's degree in music. And from there, moved to New York, and I've been so fortunate to travel all over the world, playing music, playing jazz per se. And I have my own band, Jonathan Barber and Vision Ahead, which we have now released 3 records. And right now I'm currently in my studio in Connecticut. And this is actually a break in between a session that I'm doing. So stay tuned for that. But I'm so honored and happy to be with family. I literally just met my my cousin, Reverend Norris. So that's, a blessing already. And just happy to be here and to kind of share my thoughts in my heart.
Yes. And so happy to have you with us on tonight.
Thank you.
I want to give a shout out. There's somebody that's here, and her name is Suzette, and she's tuning in from Jamaica. And so I'm going to bring on my next guest. Last but not least, cousin, how are you tonight?
I'm doing all right.
I'm so glad to have you with us on tonight. So share a little bit about yourself.
My name is Richard Norris III. I am a senior at the University of Pittsburgh studying information science with a minor in religious studies. And I am a 4th generation preacher. I don't know how much R2 talked about, our family lineage, but they tell me that when I was a very young boy in my grandparents' house, around about 6 o'clock in the morning, they would hear me screaming, "Jesus!" And that was about the only word that they can make out, because I'm not really sure that I even knew what I was saying. But from then, they knew that I was destined to be a preacher, and the Lord has definitely blessed. I've formally accepted my call. It's been about 10 years or so now.
Oh, praise God!
I was licensed to preacher 2017, and currently, as I'm getting ready to graduate from the University of Pittsburgh, I'm currently in the process of applying to seminaries and looking forward to getting my theological education.
That's wonderful. You're definitely on both sides of the family as far as preachers, ministers, and that's a blessing. That's really a blessing. I'm just delighted. One of my sisters said to me, "This is legacy." We have fathers and sons. And I'm so happy to have you guys with me tonight. So we're going to get right into our topic, and I'm hoping that other people may ask some questions. I want to begin. The topic is men taking their rightful place. And I have some questions here tonight, and we want everybody, want you guys to chime in. I'll ask you, do you think, has the church failed saying that it seems to be more about church than it is about family? What is your thoughts on that? And I'm going to start with you, Richard. What do you think?
Which one?
I'm about to say, which Richard are you talking to?
Oh, I'm sorry. Second. R2.
I think that it's I think that there's been a portion, at least, of the church that has gotten very institutionalized. And what happens a lot of times with institutions is institutions seek to feed the institution. And so the core mission of the church in some instances has taken a back seat, promoting family, and getting caught up in the organization. I mean, because I'm AME, and AME Church has got a major organization behind it. And if we're not careful, we can lose sight of what we're supposed to do. And that's to make disciples. That is to draw people closer to Christ. And so it's definitely a struggle. It can be a struggle. And so some places have done better than others. But I think it's in general, I think it's just something that institutions can fall into.
Right. Pastor John, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. As he was, one part of the statement he said about making disciples, and that's really what it's all about. But at some point in time, that it seems like the church, it overtakes the family, which it should be. Family should be first. It's not saying that we're not saying that God isn't first, but God is first, and then the family and the church. So a lot of times we find ourselves doing so much in the church that we forget about family. And so in some churches, yes, it's true that it has failed, but in some churches it have not.
Right.
Another thing I just want to point out is that we have to be sure that we understand and know the condition of our flock. And so in order for us to know where the church stands, we need to know the flock. And family is that flock, is the church.
Right. Very true. Very true. I'm going to ask these to our young men. As young men, what have you been looking for as examples as a male preparing yourself for family and maybe for marriage? I'm going to start with R3.
For me, it was just trying to understand what it means to be there for your family. What type of characteristics will I have to have eventually if I want to one day, be a father or have a family. And I've leaned a lot, off of what I see from my dad and even from my grandfather. So trying to ascertain what their practices are and how they've tried to connect with me as their son, their grandson, how they've tried to connect with my siblings, as their daughters and granddaughters, understanding what works and what maybe doesn't work sometimes, and where there's room to grow.
Right. Absolutely. And Jonathan, same question.
Sure. I think actions speak louder than words. And for me, naturally, I consider myself a visual learner. And I think it's important to not, demonstrate character with words, but do it through actions and through examples. And I think it's important that we show these examples by standing beside someone, leading them
Right.
to if it's fatherhood or to be a man. I think that's very important because more than words itself, I think people really take on actions, because obviously you can feel someone's spirit and you can feel someone's genuine heart. And I think, to not only do the work of something, you have to have the heart of it. So to not just be a father, you have to have the heart of a father, So I think it's, and to have the heart of it, it's to express it as well. So I think, for me, what I look for is more of the expression of it, because in some cases anyone could typically be a father,
Yeah.
scientifically,
Right.
but it definitely takes the heart, and it takes a certain kind of character to actually, be a father and to be nurturing and to continue to be a father, as well. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, my next question, does the church adequately mentor men and even going into adulthood? Let me start with John.
I would say in some churches you will find that there's a lot of men groups that are mentoring the younger generation. I think it's very important that every church, in order to survive to the next level, each generation, is very important that we mentor the young adults.
Yeah.
And so I see it as a very great need for the church to continue. And so, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, Richard R2?
Well, yeah, I mean, some have better success than others.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think when you look overall in a lot of churches, we're lacking men.
Yeah.
Due to a lot of different forces. I mean, between mass incarceration and all kinds of different things. And so it's important that I think really also that we focus on making sure that we wrap our arms around and love the very young ones.
Yeah.
To help bring them along to you got to kind of get them early.
Right.
I know in a lot of churches, we have young people in general, but particularly men, up until the point where their parents can't make them go to church anymore.
Yeah.
And then, we do what we do.
Right.
And then prayerfully we come back at some point. And the hope is that we'll be like the father in the story of the prodigal son, that when we see you afar off, we'll welcome you and not chastise you just for going off and doing whatever you might have been doing. So I think it's definitely important, particularly with our young men.
Yeah.
And speaking as a Black man, it's very important that we reach out and mentor and nurture Black men as much as we can, particularly in this country.
And that's true, especially Black men. Now, I'm going to ask this for R3 and Jonathan. Do you think that the church has adequately mentored you as going into adulthood?
I will say this. Black institutions, I would contend, on many facets, usually have a problem with evolving. What I mean by that is we're not always okay with the fact that the purpose that this institution serves now is not necessarily the same purpose that it needed to serve when it was first founded. Because let's think about it. Like, for example, I will take the AME Church. If the AME Church really had to be what it was in 1787, we would be in a very, very tight predicament in America. And in that same vein, what, folk in Richard Allen's time, what my grandfather needed to be mentored, what my father needed to to be mentored. It's not necessarily what I needed or need to be mentored.
Right.
And I'm grateful that I've been able to have people in my life that recognize that there are some things that don't change. That there is a here and now to things. That there is a certain generational gap that needs to be closed and needs to be addressed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What do you say, Jonathan?
I guess to reiterate the question, do I feel like I've been adequately mentored in the church?
Mm-hmm.
I think, I guess looking back my 31 years, I think, it was the best possible as far as people mentoring me or from what I've learned. I will say, like, more importantly, I think it's the Holy Spirit that ultimately I need the most. I will say, I mean, there's many, many, many male figures, I must add, but people within ministry that have been a mentor and been a great source of inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
But even in my moments where, I might feel alone or maybe felt overlooked or felt neglected, it's my relationship with God and having the Holy Spirit to kind of order my steps and to kind of build a relationship with Him. Because on the flip side of this, sometimes we can put more trust and more hope and faith in our mentor than God Himself. And sometimes we run to the person to call them my mentor, my spiritual father, and this and that, and we don't really have the relationship with God ourselves, or we get so let down by the expectations of other people.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I will say, I think it was the best that could have been done in that moment, and I'm grateful for the grace and for the mercy and for, again, the Holy Spirit to really make intercession for me when I didn't necessarily know my next move or my direction, and that God has always been faithful to me, growing, becoming a man. So yeah, I would say I think it's more about, number one, I think it's more about the relationship, but it's also, on the other side of it, I would say I think you got to shine light more on a relationship with God and not overly, on the relationship of other, men.
Right. Mm-hmm. Very good. What have you seen men not do, Pastor John? What have you seen men not do, whether in the church,
I've seen men not really listen to what the younger generation is saying. For people my age, we're used to being sort of like tough, straight. We used to put on this demeanor back in the day of, in order to be a man, you have to be strong, and you talk to the kids like they're a soldier, like you're a soldier, and things like that. So I think in today's time, we have to get away from that and listen to what the new generation is saying. Listen to what they're feeling.
Yeah.
And, then give them advice, give them a testimony, give them some things that you have went through or struggled with. Let them know that, you're human, that you make mistakes, but, what do you do about it? And so we have to learn to teach them the wisdom and things like that.
Right. What do you say, Richard?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it's interesting. There's always a generational tension, right, between the older generation and the generation that's coming.
Mm-hmm.
The generation that's coming up never thinks that the older generation is listening to them. They think that they're stuck in their ways. And then it's funny because when young Johnny was saying, all of my 31 years, I remember when that sounded like that used to be a big number to me.
Yeah.
But I think that it's interesting because coming through that type of a situation where you're saying we're trying to come into our own and you're stifling us because you're just stuck on what's old.
Right.
Sometimes if we're not careful, we'll find ourselves doing the same thing once we get to where they were.
Right.
And the next generation is coming, and we find ourselves having that same conversation on the other side.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's why I love the old hymn that says, to serve this present age. It takes, I think, where a lot of times we have fallen down is understanding and having the ability to talk to each other, having the generations be able to talk to each other, say, hey, look, I can tell you, I don't know, John, have you ever seen an 8-track cassette or 8-track tape?
Jonathan.
Have you ever heard of an 8-track tape?
I've heard of it. I've not seen it. No.
Yes, you're right. So, and I came in on the tail end of that. So I remember talking to a preacher one time. He said, sometimes we have to remember some of these young people that we're talking to, they've never played a cassette tape before.
That's right.
They don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
They barely know what CDs are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so understanding that, the message stays the same, right? Jesus still saves. The wages is still death, right? The 10 commandments are still there, but how we express it, how we get it to especially our younger generation, and to get them to embrace it, and those types of things becomes very, very important.
Right. Absolutely.
And I also want to add on to that. What he was saying also is that sometimes we don't show love to the younger generation or people that we are mentoring, and that's what they're missing. A lot of youth, a lot of people are missing love, and I think that's very important, because the world tries to imitate love. True love comes from God.
Right.
And so we are imitators of Jesus Christ, and so therefore we have to counter that with the word. Let them know that it may seem light on that side, but it's not necessarily so. It's not necessarily
right.
That's
okay. No, I was going to say, sometimes I wonder if the expression of love is where we get. It's not that they're not. It's not that because I was thinking back to how you were talking about how the older men or in a certain generation, it was about being tough, being strong. You don't cry, right? Real men don't cry. And there was a certain image or persona of what a man was supposed to be, how he was supposed to act, how he's supposed to emote.
Right.
We're kind of in a different time to where sometimes I think, generationally speaking, the expression of love may be from one generation coming off as real stern and real hard, but they're doing their best to love you the way that they know how.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's sometimes, I think, a translation gap between I'm loving you, but you're not I'm loving you, but you're not understanding what I'm saying to you or how I'm interacting with you to be love. And we've got to find a way to synthesize and to understand, and kind of understand, how, some of the things you said in the past, we've said years past, you can't say nowadays, right? And the way that it comes off and that kind of a thing. So
that's true. Now there's somebody on Facebook asking this question. I'm gonna direct this to R3 and also to Jonathan. Do you think young people appreciate the wisdom that flows from the older generations? R3, what do you think?
In general, yes. Like on the whole, yes. But I think what the disconnect is that younger people might think that that wisdom can always be expounded upon, and then I think sometimes the idea is that this is the wisdom. There is no deviation from it. There is no improving upon it or updating it or something like that. I mean, I think one of the things that my father and I have been able to do very well is finding common ground. Like we share a passion for technology, and we share this Christian ministry that we both have.
Right.
He's had experiences, watching my grandfather be a pastor in, a number of different congregations. Right. And I've been able to grow up and see him as a minister of music, and now as a pastor, and even develop my own opinions about worship, or the politics of our denomination and things like that. And I understand that, when it comes to the meeting of the minds, like, he's always going to have more than I have, in the reserves, but also that I'm going to have a completely new, take on things. And he values that. He doesn't, push that aside, or like if we have a difference of opinion about certain things, we still are able to find, that common ground. Where I could, like, one of the things I think is very ironic, tonight we're both wearing our fraternity shirts, and obviously we joined different fraternities, and I'm not sure how well he's made peace with that yet.
Well, let me just say, for the record, only one of us has a real fraternity shirt.
But at the end of the day, we understand why we joined our organizations, and that it's all love. Regardless. This idea of being able to find a common ground is mainly where I think a lot of disconnect happens. One is not willing to see the other's point of view.
Right. And Jonathan, what do you think? Do you think young people appreciate the wisdom that flows from the older generations?
Yeah, I mean, naturally, I think younger people want to seek information, especially from people who have done it. Generally, you seek inspiration, from someone that's older. I think what can be the shift, if you will, is sometimes I think the expression can maybe come across a little condescending, by saying, oh, you good, but back in my day, it was the level here. So then you're like suppressing my level and basically saying that this level's up here and I will never get to this level unless I hear what you have to say with these words, And so I think it's kind of the expression can maybe a little rough around the edges, or can be a little maybe misleading, as far as for a younger person to perceive what they're really trying to say. And lastly, I would say that on both sides of the younger generation, older generation, we can't make what we like law. And although we know what we like what we like, we have to understand that is not the law. That meaning that things evolve, and what works for some may not work for the other. This me being a musician, like someone in an older generation, they might like this certain band. In my generation, I might like this band. And it's not to say that one band is better than the other, but I like this band, you like this band. And it's a beautiful thing. And a lot of times we can find a lot of common ground, actually. But I think, we just have to kind of respect, I guess, what each generation likes, and how it kind of resonates with us. Like, I'll say growing up in the 90s, there's certain things that resonate with me that I had no kind of connection with if we're talking about the 80s or the 70s. Like, I just wasn't there. But I respect the history, and I'm sure, what was happening in the 70s, 80s was some serious great times, and you know what I mean? But the fact that my connection wasn't necessarily there. So again, I think it's kind of understanding that, we all have valuable experience that we hold on to, but again, we can't let it be condescending to the next person.
Right. Absolutely.
No, I think it's part of the problem that we have as a country right now, right? We can't have a conversation unless I'm all in on your point of view. I'm not trying to talk to you anymore.
Right.
And we'll never get anywhere like that.
Right. Absolutely.
That's almost like having a hat that's like one size fit all. That's not true.
Right.
You have different opinions, different ideas, different values, things, and so We have to consider that when we're talking with one another and do it respectfully.
Right. Absolutely. Now here's a comment, Todd from Greenville, South Carolina. He says, in my case, I was adequately taught to be a man, but not a father. Partially my fault for holding on to anger that I didn't really get rid of till my late 30s. Between me, God, and me, questioning his taking my dad, I didn't want to receive what was being shown. Anybody want to comment on that?
Yeah,
Well, it sounds like his father passed away, I guess, at an early age.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, processing.
He felt like he wasn't
traumatic experiences at a young age. I mean, and handling that.
Right.
That's a tough thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm blessed. I'm 49 years old and my father's still alive.
Mm-hmm.
But my father talks all the time about how when they came to Philadelphia, he was a babe in my grandmother's arms, and,
mm-hmm.
And my grandfather passed. My father was a young man. I mean, young. I don't even think he was out of high school yet. And so, and that's where the village really needs to come in and step in, I believe.
Yeah. Yes. Anybody else want to?
Yeah, I understand how you feel, and sometimes the enemy will come in and put up roadblocks in your life, and have you hold on to something in the past, and that could really be devastating in your growth with God, and even your growth with yourself, because you didn't have a role model there. He passed, and so you're a man, but he wasn't there to teach you to be a father.
Yeah.
Even though my father's living, I still had to still learn in some aspects how to be a father, because the way that he raised me might not necessarily be the way that I raised my son. But then too, I can understand the hurt and pain of losing a loved one and being angry with God, because I lost my oldest son.
Yeah.
In this case, I wasn't really angry with God because of where I stood with God. I understood what was going on, but I was hurt, and so I pray that that the peace of God will give you the understanding, and that you will have establish a relationship with God to understand, to break down these barriers that are trying to hold you back. Because one thing, being a father, I learned with my son, both my sons, was I let them be who they are. And so instead of trying to make them be me,
right,
I looked at my life, and I wanted them to be who they were.
Yeah.
And so it's a learning, it's a learning process. It's not, you don't have a book to tell you how to be a father. But I can also add on to that is that what you didn't have, and you realize what you didn't have, is what you give to your son or your daughter. In other words, if you didn't get the hugs, hug them. And so, that's a way that can help you to get through that.
Right. Well, do you guys think that the church basically, because I don't find that there is a lot of men's ministries in churches. Now, you will have women's ministries, because women will come together and have their retreats, or they'll have their sessions and talk, and they'll do that consistently every month. But you don't find that many men's ministries that are active in the church. And if they are, it's like just a handful may show up, and you don't see any of the younger men. Do you guys find that to be, and I know, Richard, you have a church, you're a pastor. Do you find that it's lacking in the church, where you don't have as many men, coming together to talk? Because I would think even in men's groups, they could have some sessions where they talk about fatherhood, about marriage, about how to open up the door, how to really, be a man, and even taking leadership roles in church as well as outside of the church. So, Richard, maybe you can elaborate on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it can be a struggle because if you, well, first of all, if you don't have a lot of men to start with, that's one issue. The second is depending on the spread of the ages or the spread of interest, that kind of a thing. Each person likes what they like, and so depending on how the conversations or the programming might be skewed, it could be tough because if you're dividing 5 people and 2 of them like one thing, 2 of them like another, and one doesn't like either one of them, then you know what I mean. So it can be a struggle, but I think the biggest thing is finding, at least with the group that you're starting with, what all of those things I think are definitely important. Having those sessions where men can just come together and to talk, because in so many ways in our society, Black men are just not heard.
Right.
There are just times where we just need to be able to sit around, talk as men, one to another about men issues, and get some things off of our chest, or express some things that we need to talk man to man. And it takes a while to develop that level of trust, right? Because there are some people that have known each other for a long time, but will not talk about certain issues around certain other people for whatever reason. Right. And so we've got to break through a whole lot of different barriers as far as that's concerned.
Right.
But you just try to meet them where they are and let it grow from there.
Right.
And build a safe space. And I think that's really that's probably what the biggest thing is, making sure that you really have a genuinely safe space where you can talk, you can express. And as long as, and I tell people all the time, if you're talking to me, as long as you're not talking about hurting yourself or somebody else, we can discuss whatever the issue is.
Yeah.
Without it going past my ears or the group's ears. Right. And that's the goal, is to have a safe space where we can actually talk and discuss.
And as young men, Jonathan and R3, do you ever get a time, or does young men come together to talk? Do you find that happens, or that's lacking? R3, what do you think? And then Jonathan.
It's all about intentionality. I believe a lot of the problems that I always observe and notice in the church really boil down to, it's like, if we wanted to do X, Y, and Z, we would, but the problem is we don't. So it just doesn't, it doesn't happen. And so, like, in many instances, the key to the problem is just having someone who's in authority to just say, okay, yes, let's try to think about different ways of making our programming more inclusive for the younger men, or identifying who would be good at heading up that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think young men in the church will cling together, essentially. I think a lot of the friends that I've made, in a church setting, have always been the ones that have, I've always been able to notice them. They're something about their walk, something about, how they carry themselves in church always stood out to me. And I know, like, that's somebody I needed to get connected with, whether or not, that's with the men's ministry or not. Those have been, my longest lasting friendships. And
Jonathan.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Speaking from my generation, it's an interesting period right now. I mean, first we got COVID, but let's say like before COVID, we're in this like kind of work mode, and sometimes, we're young, ambitious, and I think we do need to make time for kind of checking in with one another, with our spiritual health. I think is very important. And I do think there's a little lack in that.
Yeah.
And and it's also has to do with the community itself. Whether if things can happen on more of a virtual level, since we're kind of heading in that direction, and creating spaces where we can, again, check in with one another and really, kind of pour into each other. Because obviously, like, we all are, have our own, battles that we're dealing with as men, as believers, and also as, 20, 30-year-old men trying to pursue our career. And so having like-minded believers encouraging one another, I think, is very important and needed and necessary. But also, I want to say something as far as like the church and what Reverend Norris said about really creating spaces. I think it's also creating spaces to give men liberty to express themselves outside of the stigmas that the typical, well, not the typical, but outside of the stigmas that the church has kind of labeled men to be. Usually, we're the workers. We're kind of like the janitors, and that's kind of like the label of as far as work. And the issues that we focus in the church is stuff of like building, cleaning, just the handy, put your hands to work. But again, checking the spiritual health of men, and establishing that culture, establishing that tone, if you will, of men being able to have a space to express themselves and to be, vocal amongst each other. And to not just focus on the natural health as far as, the upkeep of the church, but also the spiritual health of what's on the inside.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, do you think, but I know, well, neither one of you have daughters. And my question was, I know my brother has a granddaughter, but what are your thoughts on fathering men versus female, or boys versus girls? I mean, there definitely is a difference. Well, John, you want to discuss that a little bit?
Yeah, there's definitely a difference. But I think that, yet being a man, you still can share a lot to a woman, or to a young girl, a little girl, my granddaughter. You live the life, you let them know how a man is, how they're supposed to treat a woman, how they carry themselves. You demonstrate to them a godly character. Just being able to sort of like meet them as much as you can where they're at, as far as understanding them, being sensitive to their feelings and things like that. Right. It's totally different, but yet still, there's a lot of tools and a lot of things that you can still teach a girl, or a young girl.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think it's coming from from two different angles. Just like John said, you can show a young man, a boy, how to become a man, and then you can show a girl what to expect from a man.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And which is just as important, because a lot of, I think the studies show that when young girls don't receive the love and caring from a wholesome perspective from a man, they end up getting it from a non-wholesome perspective.
That's true.
And then it goes sideways. So
that's very true. Now, here's a statement from a pastor, Pastor Williams. He says, men by nature are much more private than women. Therefore, it's a big challenge to get us together in a setting to open up. Notice in Genesis 3:10, after Adam messed up, Adam was the one that said that he was naked and ashamed. Eve never said that she was ashamed to be naked. Women generally find it much more easier to be naked with their feelings and emotions openly more than us men. All of your guests are on point. Much respect to all the mighty men of God. Yeah.
Check is in the mail, Reverend.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anybody have something to say on that?
We always are taught to suppress our feelings, hold back our tears, hold back our hurt and pain. And as the pastor had said, that we definitely need to be more open to let the other man know that, you know, I'm vulnerable too. I have hurt and pains too. You know, women share it all the time. You know, just how men have been taught just about ever since they've been on earth to suppress. And so that we need to be open to let them know that we're human and that we have hurt and pain. Like the scripture says, iron sharpens iron and another man sharpens another man. So therefore, through your hurt and pain, it's okay. You know, I'm there. You know, I've been there. And so we cannot keep suppressing, being fake to a lot of people. I'm living a double standard life as far as thinking men don't hurt, men don't have problems and situations.
Right.
So yeah, Pastor, that's a good point.
Yes.
And I also say, ladies, y'all have to help us with that, right? Because when we do show our vulnerable side, you can't try to emasculate us in the process, you know, right? You know, when we show vulnerability, that does not mean we're weak.
Right.
When we open up and allow you to see that's you know, so you can help us with that. So that's just.
Well, I'm glad that Pastor. I don't want to go there. I'm glad that you were there.
But it's real. And so because what ends up happening is it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Or self-fulfilling cycle. Because if every time I show vulnerability, you beat me over the head with it, guess what? I know the definition of insanity. So if you're going to keep beating me over there, I'm never going to open up. I'm never going to say anything. I'm never going to, reveal. And so we have to be sensitive to that, men to men, right? Man to man. But then also women, you have to be sensitive to that as well. Yeah. Understanding that, you know, if you got a man that's really opening up to you, you need to embrace that.
Right.
I mean, you know, you can't have it both ways. Like you can't criticize a man for not opening up and then criticizing him when he does open up. It's just it doesn't work.
Right.
Don't mesh.
Exactly. Now, Pastor Williams says most of us men don't talk. However, we are always communicating.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, Jonathan and R3, as young men, your friends, have you seen a difference between when there's like one parent in the house, when there's boys in there, versus two parents in the house? Have you guys seen a difference in the home? You know, Jonathan, I'll start with you.
Yeah, a little. You know, I think some of my close friends, didn't have a father in their household, and I can see, you know, like the effect that it had on them, and it's not necessarily having that kind of advice around, or always having, let's say, a female perspective, which, you know, there's nothing wrong with the female perspective, and like we just said, that is very needed, and should be considered. But definitely having a male view is very vital. And so I think in some of the upbringing, I definitely noticed a difference of how they, I guess, you know, value other men, or how they seek acceptance. You know, I kind of see it in some of those areas that some of my friends, did.
I would say that I would actually be the friend, whose parents, you know, weren't together. Like, you know, my parents are divorced, and but the difference for me though, my father's always been in my life. He's never been a deadbeat dad. I just want to make sure that's public record.
Put it in the chat.
that was always one of the things that I think it never really bothered me, but it was always something that I took account of. All of my friends would be talking about, what their mother and father would, be doing together. And it's like, I don't really have a frame of reference for that because my parents got divorced when I was young. And it wasn't debilitating with my relationship with either of them.
Right.
I will say they never made it. They never made it seem like it was because of me or anything like that. Or they never made me the villain of the story. And it wasn't. But I will say, like, those friends that I know where either their father had died when they were young or something like that. Like, for example, my line brother, his father died and he was very young. But he had a village of uncles that turned out to be actually his father's line brothers that made sure that he had what he needed. And I think all of my friends whose father might not have been in their life as much as they might have wanted, they always had a village that contributed to their growth.
Right.
So I could see the difference, but it wasn't. It was always negligible.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I just want to say two things on that from a slightly different aspect, and that is I had my oldest son was out of wedlock. Well, I wasn't always there in the beginning, but I had to turn my life around and see that, wait a minute, I'm not going to let this be a statistic. I'm going to be the father that this is my son. And so I'm going to be the man. I'm going to be his father. I'm going to be there for him. And so even though, you may have a son or a daughter that's not from your husband, from your wife, still you do have to still be there for them. And so my thing was that I'm going to raise him up, let him know of the love that I have for him. Same love that I have for my youngest son, Jonathan. And so that's how I was raised. My father lived that example before us, how to be a father, how to be a man. And so I say that to encourage, to let anybody know that's listening, is that men rise up, stand up in your space, stand up for your child, stand up for your son, be there for them, your son or your daughter. And so I never wanted to have a separation, to make sure that love was there for both of them. And that's what we did.
Right. Which worked out.
Yes.
What role models do you guys have? John, I'll start with you since you just finished talking. Do you have a role model, or did you have one, or?
You took John or Jonathan?
John, you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We got too many double names in here.
I know.
She said John. My dad was my role model.
Huh?
You asked who was my role model. My father was my
role model. Yes.
My father was my role model. I learned so much from him, even though he was sort of quiet, but he taught me a lot. He taught me a lot, and the life that he lived before me, just even let me introduce me to Christ. And so he's a great man, and I love him dearly. And I never forget that because he used to always go to church all the time, and sometimes he missed going to some of my games and things like that. I used to be teased about it. And there was a situation whereas coming home from school and the kids would tease me, "Where's your dad? He's never here." "Oh, he's in church," But I still had that type of relationship that I understood because he sat down and told me, "This is what I do. This is, and things of that nature." And so, he taught me a lot. The life that he lived before me, and just seeing him helping other people and showing love and things like that, being a father figure for so many other people. So he's definitely a great role model for me.
Yes. What about you, Jonathan?
Yeah, ditto in the sense of my dad and my grandfather, even my brother. All are very influential in my life, and first as far as my dad, who I've obviously the closest, his teachings, upbringings, and just seeing his faithfulness to God and to family is one of my biggest takeaways. And same thing with my grandfather, how I say this all the time, how I personally never saw my grandfather upset. I never have. And I kind of tease my grandmother because she just said, "Oh, if you live with him or if you around him a little longer, you'll see it." But all my years, I've never saw him lose his temper or anything. I just think that's just amazing, And my brother, um, us being, I want to say 6 or 7 years apart, he was definitely a big brother and somewhat, he had his fathering ways of just being very nurturing and just showing me a lot and
Yeah.
knowing I was at that age where I would absorb everything that he would do, someone older would do, and I'm just grateful that it was good things, because it could have been, I could have absorbed some negative things or some bad examples from my older brother, but Kyle definitely really laid a good foundation, as far as like, how to be a teenager and what to look forward to, and when you turn 18 and things of that nature, and and being cool with it, So it, yeah, definitely, I would say I had strong, positive, wise, God-fearing mentors. Or
Yeah. Okay. Richard, both Richards.
Well, I would definitely. I mean, I'm my father. Absolutely. He was. I don't know. He was my role model. I'll say, even as a young man or a young boy, he always do something about something. I mean, it was, whether it was, I mean, I literally watched him restore a 1948 Buick Roadmaster. And he was not a mechanic, but he had the ability. He would read about whatever it was, and then he would go do it. And it was and just having that ability. I mean, I look at some of the things that I know how to do now, which or at least I know about. He taught me about, knowing how to do something so nobody can rip you off.
Right.
Some of the basic things in life, just as people pay people to do things for two reasons for the most part. Either they don't know how to do it or they don't feel like doing it.
Right.
And so I mean, so he was definitely very spiritual, he had a very quiet demeanor. But he was still very strong.
Right.
He was definitely the strong and silent type. But when he spoke wisdom. When he spoke, there was weight to his words. And sometimes I had to get a thesaurus when I listened to him talk to me, just because he was just that type of a person. And so he's just someone that I've always looked up to. He taught me how to orchestrate a pipe organ.
Really?
The variants and the different stuff. I mean, just stuff like that. Wow. I mean,
that's amazing.
And I also know how to change a pipe in a sewer pipe in the house if that comes, if that becomes important at some point during the discussion.
You got to do that. Good Lord. R3.
Yeah, I would say that his father, my grandfather, also served as like one of my biggest role models. Just because of his his humility. Like he has accomplished and done so many great things in his lifetime. You would never know it because he doesn't boast about it. He really is an example of, may the works I've done speak for me.
Yeah.
Because countless people, people that only know me because they know I'm his grandson, constantly talk about some minute thing or some, little experience they had with him that enriched their life. And, that was one of the things that, I've always tried to, try to emulate, being a guiding light in somebody else's life. Somebody that, they can be proud to say that, I ran into, or, that I met, anything like that. With my dad, if we're getting in the technical things, I've technically been preaching longer than he has. If we're being completely technical, he's a lot smarter than I am now. But anyway, I mean, the greatest lesson my dad ever taught me was that it's never too late to step into the calling that God has for your life. We used to make a lot of jokes about him, about how he would always be doing these speaking engagements or whatever, but never wanted to say that he was a preacher. I guess it finally took root when he preached his trial sermon, and now like I tell him all the time, how proud I am of him, like just to see how he's been able to blossom into this pastor that Bethel Hosanna just loves. I mean, I can't even accurately put in words how much they so loudly and audibly love their pastor. And that's just in God's own time. I think that's one of the things that I have a lot of anxiety about. Not fitting in the right place at the right time. But he's been the ultimate testament that what the Lord has for you, is for you. And when it comes down to it, God always makes sure you're in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Now, I'm grateful to him for that.
Yeah. Very true. Diane Dixon says, yes, we love him so much.
Thank you, Diane.
I wanted to, we have some comments here that I want to read to you before we close. I think the way, this is from Pastor Eugene Taylor, I think the way the parents interact in the divorce or separation is critical for the mindset of the male child. Often the mom berates the father and bashes him so that the son grows up rejecting his father. It's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Pastor Williams says, Delilah made Samson fall asleep on her knees because she made him feel comfortable. In Judges 16 and 19, Samson's attraction to Delilah was more about sleep, comfort, than sex. These are great men of wisdom on this program. Thank you, Pastor.
You should have joined us. He dropped all these gems.
Right.
Yes, he is.
But I do think that comment about, especially if you're talking about co-parenting, the relationship of the two parents is so important, no matter whether the parents are together or separated.
That's true.
For whatever reason, because as long as the two parents can at least have some type of relationship where they respect each other and they can communicate with each other and work with each other, then it makes all the difference in the world.
Right.
Because once you have a situation where one is bashing the other one and all this kind of stuff, and you're setting the child up for a bad situation. I won't say for failure, but for a bad situation. Right. And so I think that's very, very important that that for the child, you should the parents kind of need to say, all right, look, we need to figure out some kind of way to work together, right? I don't like your nail polish. You don't like my mustache, but fine. We need to figure out how we're going to raise this child.
Right.
And to make sure that the child is put first as far as that's concerned.
Right. And here's another pastor that says, Pastor Jackson, good men are so important in the development of young men and young women, in particular, their self-confidence and worth.
Absolutely.
Yes. Very true. It was some more comments. I'm trying to see if I could. My aunt said that's important, Reverend Richard, especially if you need to call a plumber.
That's why I'll never get ripped off.
That's right. Never.
I did.
Right. I have two more questions, and then we're going to close. My other question is, Why do you believe that there's so many men that don't desire to get married? Why do you believe that there's so many men that really do not desire to be married? Pastor John, you were talking.
I wasn't, but I will. There's a few reasons why probably they are afraid. Out of fear. Let's see. I also think that the responsibility in marriage is very important, and so they might not be ready. They might not be ready to lose their friends, their best friends, hanging out and things like that, and so, yeah, their identity, finances. There's a few things that cause them to be afraid of marriage. Yeah, I can go on, but I'll get space to the reverend.
But you know what? I think also, generally speaking, young people are tending to get married later. In general, like that's kind of the trend. They're living their lives, so to speak, and then they're waiting to have children. So I think that's part of it. And then sometimes it's, maybe there was a bad breakup, in their in their household, in their upbringing. There could be some fear. There could be the vestiges of a bad divorce or a messy divorce or, whatever. So, I mean, I think it's a number of different things.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Two young men, I don't want to put you on the spot. Would you like to answer?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I think more now than ever, excuse me, that I think divorce is being publicized at a high level, so to be a young person, and that's what you see a lot as far as like, this couple was now divorced, and you kind of see that's around you, because at one point growing up, I remember, in your 20s, that was a prime year to get married. It's just like, when I'm 25, I'm going to have a house and a car. I'm going to be married at 27. I'm going to have a kid. You know what I mean? Like, you see all these things. And then like, as you get older, especially for me, like, with social media and just, everything's like online and also everyone's business out there, you kind of see, a lot of divorce happening. You're just like, man, I thought they all had it together. And so you kind of, again, like my dad said, fear, one thing. But I think also too, speaking on like the social media and like the digital age, I think there's a lack of identity of knowing who you are. So it's kind of like, if I'm struggling to know who I am and to kind of figure myself out, how in the world am I supposed to figure life out with someone else? Yeah. And if they're having a almost identity crisis, if we come together, it's going to be a wreck, or what can happen is we get together based off of the superficial stuff. And then once we're in it, we realize like, wait a minute, this is a whole other ballgame. And then that's, I guess, divorce, whatever, which can lead to what Reverend Norris said about, bad breakups and just like a bad experience. So, speaking on, I'll say the 21st century, or, from the lens of, 31-year-old, I would definitely say kind of like what you see around you. Like, I think divorce is kind of publicized more than marriage and healthy marriages. Like, we give all this credit and attention to people that's getting divorced and not credit and attention to people that's been together 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. We don't champion that. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, they've been married for X amount of years, but if they get divorced, then boom, it's all on national news and things of that nature. So I think right there can bring an intimidation and say, well, you know what, then, I'm all set.
I mean, with the bare bones interpretation of it, it's just like, I think Sister Collins hit it on the head. It's like, a lot of young men, especially like my age, are like, not ready for commitment. I definitely have a nice number of friends where if I ever hear that they're about to get married, I might actually think Jesus is about to come back. Because there are some people who I just know it's going to take a while for them to warm up to the idea of settling down. And to a certain degree, that's okay, because you don't want somebody to be forced into a relationship or a marriage. That's not really their scene, and sometimes they find that maybe a relationship is not what they'll pursue, or
right.
This is going to take longer than most.
Right.
But in everyone's own time.
Right. But do you think the church hasn't really, not really forced, but really talked about it to our younger men, in preparation for marriage? And before you answer, there's some comments. Some people, one person, my mother, said because of their careers and their education, Pastor Taylor said here, the culture has driven young people to think more independent, and because of such a lack of communication is prevalent in the young people of today. Pastor Williams says, men also don't want a helpmate. We want what it says in Genesis 2:18. God said he made Adam a helpmate. Kingdom men desire to have someone that's going to help him meet dreams and goals in life. And then there's another conversation. Someone says, healthy marriages require work that many are not willing to put in.
Yeah, I think it's all of that. Yeah. I mean, to some degree.
Many men from my generation want to outsmart future failure in a marriage, so they put unrealistic expectations on potential spouses and the circumstances needed to marry them. This is from Texas.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a combination of all of that.
All of it, yeah. I agree.
Because I remember sounding like young Jonathan, at 25, I'm going to be married and do da-da-da-da-da. And then, life happened and it was, that's not the way it was going to go. So,
things happen. We have so many, I find that there's so many women in the church and there's not that many men. And I'm speaking for the women point of view, is really lacking, where we don't have the men that desire to even want to get married, and some of them haven't been prepared. Some of them lack of commitment, are afraid, or just want somebody to talk to, but they don't want to go any further, with that. So I think all of this is,
it's a lot of intertwining issues, I think. So, because you got societal problems that filter into the church.
Right.
Especially when you talk about, maybe the number of men that are just, the available man.
Yeah.
And that affects, it just starts rippling and causing a larger ripple, a larger issue, so to speak.
Yeah. I think what society is teaching nowadays about marriage and who to marry, sort of thing. They're not looking at marriage the way it used to be or by what the Word of God says it is to be. So there's a lot of independence in people's lives now, more so than before.
Do you find more men are living at home longer?
From what I hear, everybody's living at home longer.
Yeah. Because of
and it's interesting because one of the comments I think said something about their education and their jobs. Coming out of school now, you come out with a heavy load. A lot of our young people come out with a heavy load.
Yeah.
So they may not financially be ready to get married because let's assume you have two young people that went to college and they both come out with $100,000 worth of debt.
Yeah.
They're behind 2 8 balls and
already.
Already. So they may not be in a position to do that, or may not even have that on their mind.
Right.
And I think I also saw one comment that was it spoke about what people were looking for
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think Reverend Eric was saying about, you know, the help meet. You know, somebody who's going to help them meet their dreams.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that there's too many times there's this stereotype that some people look for,
Mm-hmm.
where you've got the ready-made man. He's already got a good job. He's already got, you know, already got a house or the means and all that kind of stuff. And maybe what it is, it's more of the thought process ought to be, we'll build a life together,
Right.
rather than I'll tag along to the life that you've started.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, and that takes work.
Yeah.
Right.
Because marriage is much more than that as well, because sometimes you may not have all those things. It could be a disaster that come and hit.
Yep.
You know, something unexpectedly can happen. And so you have to know that you have a husband or a wife that's going to be there by your side.
Yeah.
You know, so
yeah.
So because of the way society is now with COVID, and I think it was said careers and education, so you have more people, the younger people are 30 years old, whatever, maybe at home now more so than what we used to see.
Yeah.
Society have changed, the way of living has changed, the cost of living. Yeah.
Okay, absolutely. Okay, gentlemen, for my last question, in your opinion, what should men be doing to be all that God wants them to be in a less than ideal world? What should men be doing to be all that God wants them to be in a less than ideal world? I'll start with R3.
I would just say we got to continually seek God's guidance. Everybody has a place to fit in the kingdom, and God has a plan for how He wants all of us to fit. And it behooves us to make sure we're doing all we can to listen to what God is saying to us, and to clearly identify what path He's making clear for us. And it may or may not be what we're expecting or what we might necessarily want at a particular time.
Right.
It's okay. Like I said before, you know, the Lord always puts us right where we need to be, around the people we need to be around.
True. R2.
Yeah, I would say seek God's face and listen for His voice. I mean, that if you do those two things, no matter what's going on in our society, in our world, or, you know, in our community, if you do those things, those are the most important things to do, because if you do that, you'll be able to make it through.
Absolutely. Jonathan, and then John.
Yeah, I mean, ditto what everyone's saying. Definitely, you know, seek the Lord. I would say, yeah, like love yourself. You know that you're more than enough. Give yourself credit. Believe in yourself, and don't be afraid to cast vision and follow through. Bible says, commit your ways unto the Lord, and He'll give you the desires of your heart. And as you commit to God, you know, God has already committed to you. Yeah, just trust and believe God. That's what I'll say.
Yeah. John.
Yeah, I would say to the men to rise up. The church, rise up for your family, rise up for the church is waiting for you. And in life, it's a journey. It could be like a 1,000-mile journey. In order to get to that 1,000 miles, you got to take a step. And so make that step, take that step, and just keep moving towards the end, towards your goal.
Right. Absolutely. Well, this has been a powerful night, and I want to thank you for being here with me tonight on Real Talk with Cindy, and those that have been with us on tonight. The topics have been ideal and interesting, as well as very informative. And I would love to do a part 2 before this year is over with. I think it's important to understand and hear from men as to what things they like, what things they don't like, and also as to what we should know. We as women, what we should know. So I want to thank everyone for being a part, those that are on YouTube, those that will be watching in the days, weeks, and months ahead. And please let everyone know that they can go on YouTube to follow us, to follow this. And I want to say a special thank you to my guests, to Richard Norris III, Richard Norris II, Jonathan Barber, and then John Barber Jr. I want to thank you guys for being a part of this. It was very, very informative. This is my first time having just all men on to discuss, and I want to really thank you guys for being a part. I thought it was very good and very interesting, and I just want to really thank you for being a part. So I want to say good night to everyone. Have a blessed week, and we will see you again real soon, right here on Real Talk with Cindy. God bless you.
God bless you all.
All right, cousins, when this is all over, we throwing a party up in Connecticut.
All right.